right, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome along to a very special UEFA AAA Spotlight event, with today's focus, of course, being a deep dive into sports betting. My name is Sid Coley. I'm Chief Executive at Decipher Sport, and I serve as the Secretary General of the UEFA Academy Alumni Association, or the AAA, as it's better known. We are an alumni community encompassing football executives, stakeholders from the wider sporting industry, and of course, ex-professional athletes. If you've graduated from the CFM, the MESCO, the MIP, or any other UEFA Academy program, then membership is open to you and is free of cost, and of course, unlocks various benefits such as the alumni newsletter, the UEFA AAA Masterclass series, and events like today's Spotlight, which brings us nicely on to what is in store for the next hour or so. We'll soon be joined by a couple of absolute industry stalwarts as we discuss various facets of sports betting and the wider subject of sports integrity. And on that note, we'd like to extend a word of thanks to our friends over at the Sports Integrity Global Alliance, or SIGA, for the kind invitation, as today's session forms part of the ongoing SIGA Sports Integrity Week 2023. Now, before we jump into today's session, let's hear from UEFA AAA President João Fonseca, who has, of course, played a crucial role in pulling together today's event. So with that said, João, the virtual floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Sid. And you basically said it all. So ladies and gentlemen and dear community, good afternoon. It is, of course, with great pleasure that I welcome you all to this Spotlight on sports betting event. The UEFA Academy Alumni Association is delighted to have accepted an invitation from the Sports Integrity Global Alliance, as mentioned by Sid, to participate in their Integrity Week. Today, we gather here to together discuss and learn from two outstanding executives around a very actual topic in our industry. What are the challenges? What are the opportunities? What are the risks we are facing within the sports betting landscape? These and many other questions will be answered during the next hour. I want to obviously extend a warm and heartfelt welcome to our distinguished guests, Rick Parry and Simon Thomas, two highly experienced executives who have graced us with their presence. Your participation, is what makes this event truly special. So without any further delay, let's kick off this event. I hope you all have a fantastic time, and may this be a source of inspiration to you all. Back to you, Sid. The floor is yours.
Many thanks indeed, João. Could not have said it any better myself. With that, we will say goodbye to João for just a moment. And of course, before we welcome along our very special speakers, let's take a sneak peek into the UEFA Academy and all that it has to offer.
At the UEFA Academy, we train managers, specialists and players to supply the world's favourite sport with the best professionals. Our programs are supporting you along your career and life within sports administration. A life made of international competitions, of professional excellence and empowering experiences. A life full of emotions, sharing and passion, encounters and exchanges from all horizons. A life to grow with football. Our commitment doesn't stop with your graduation. Welcome to the UEFA Academy community, where the heart of football beats.
And with that said, it gives me immense pleasure to welcome along two very special guests who, quite frankly, don't need any introduction at all, but I'll give them one anyway. First up, we have Simon Thomas, partner at Colgan Bauer and chairman of the board at InCrowd. He's held several leadership positions, including chief commercial officer at FIFA, EVP Global Sport at Fox International, and CEO at Team Marketing, who, of course, are UEFA's official partners for the Champions League, among other properties. Simon, a very warm welcome to the UEFA AAA Spotlight Series.
Thanks, Sid. Great to be here. Appreciate it.
Pleasure to have you. And next up, it truly is an honor to welcome Rick Parry, chairman of the EFL and vice chair of the FA, serving on the Professional Games Board. He's also, of course, former chief executive at Liverpool and the very first CEO of the Premier League. Rick, thanks ever so much for your time.
No, nice to be here.
Pleasure to have you. Simon, let's kick things off with a big picture chat. Of course, sports integrity appears to be the theme of today's discussion before we take a deep dive into sports betting. I've often said it doesn't get spoken about enough in the context of sport, integrity, that is. So, through your career, what would you say have been the biggest or most pressing areas of integrity in the sport industry?
Oh, it's good. It's a very wide-ranging question, I guess. I mean, integrity is like fundamental to sport, as far as I see it. It's fundamental to all walks of life, really, as the sort of trust and integrity values that everyone should live by. But particularly for sport, fans like authenticity. They like their sports to be genuine, and if they see something that is maybe rigged or illegitimate in some way, they're likely to turn off. And so sports have to really focus on that integrity aspect. I think that's really important for their long-term success. And long-term success brings greater value, and of course. So in terms of what have I seen in my career into integrity, there has obviously been some issues, and when we're talking about betting today, maybe the most highly visible ones is when you see floodlights go off in the middle of a match when some shadowy figures have decided that they don't agree with the outcome of the game. So, it can have some very, very important ramifications. But in other terms, we're just talking about the need to engage fans more consistently and with credibility. So integrity absolutely crucial to the sports industry.
Very much is paramount, of course, Simon. Thanks for that. Now, Rick, many people in the audience may or may not be aware, but you chaired a UK government, more specifically a DCMS panel on sports betting integrity a few years ago, with the panel report being commonly referred to as the Parry report. You also advised the DCMS Select Committee on its football governance review in 2011. With that in mind, could you perhaps shed some light on the Parry report and perhaps more generally speaking on the essence of integrity in sports?
Yeah, sure. So the objective of the report back in 2009, I think it was, why did the government commission it? I think it was with the upcoming 2012 Olympic Games in London, and wanting to make sure that nothing was going to go wrong there in terms of betting challenges. Tends not to at Olympic Games. It's not, frankly, a big betting market, but nevertheless, I think a really good opportunity to look from, I'll have a fresh look at what we were all doing. I found it fascinating, knowing absolutely nothing about betting. Maybe that's why I was brought in, to bring a fresh pair of eyes. But I think what separates betting from other types of cheating is that, you cheat to win, but with match fixing, you're corrupted to lose. So very, very different. But also, you can cheat to win on your own, but you are corrupted to win. So there are external players involved, which makes it a greater challenge from a sports point of view to address, because you've got the participants, the players who are being corrupted, and then you've got the corruptors somewhere out there. Very difficult for sport to tackle on its own. And the first lesson we learned was that if you're going to tackle match fixing effectively, it's all about collaboration. It's all about working together, collaboration from the sports, the bookmakers, and basically the law enforcement agencies. If you're all pulling in the same direction, then you've got some sort of a chance of addressing the problem. If you're not, then it's incredibly challenging. And so our panel brought together people from all of those sectors, some of whom, it must be said, weren't necessarily used to talking to each other on a regular basis. So I think if we did anything of value, it was break down some barriers, improve communication, and I think we came up with some sensible and practical recommendations, and all being well, it's reduced the risk of problems, certainly in this country.
Wonderful stuff. Thanks for that, Rick. Quick bit of housekeeping for the audience. Do please keep your questions coming for both Rick and Simon. We will keep enough time at the end to take audience Q&A. You can simply pop your questions into the questions tab, and they'll be taken and addressed during the course of this particular discussion. Coming back to yourself, Simon, sports betting, of course, is a major revenue stream for rights holders, with it making up approximately 40% of Premier League shirt sponsorship value as per Sports Pro. Whilst we'll get into monetization in just a moment, are there any ways in which sports betting can positively impact the industry outside the realm of purely being a revenue stream?
Yeah, look, in fact, it's probably a mistake to look at it purely in terms of a revenue stream, isn't it? I mean, one big area I would say is fan engagement. The fans have maybe a greater propensity to get involved in the matches if they've kind of a vested interest. But then maybe even more than that, to get back to the big topic that we're talking about is integrity, and I think to echo what Rick was saying, by collaborating with the betting operators and the sports books that are involved, one can look at betting as a source of revenue that can actually pay for a lot of integrity measures, which are going to have real benefits downstream for the sports themselves. Maybe another area would be just purely the data. I mean, I think the sports industry is still grappling with trying to come to terms with a direct-to-consumer environment, aren't they? And if you look at these betting operators, they've been engaging with their customers for a long time now, many years. They've been doing it very, very well. They're really good at it. The digital experts. I say when I'm talking to clubs and leagues that I can guarantee that those guys know more about your fans than you do. So there's a lot to learn from them, and a lot to be gained through greater cooperation. And so, as I say, there's so much that can be synergistic with sitting around the table and actually entering into proper partnerships, sharing data, sharing expertise. That's way more than just pure revenue. So if you're just looking at betting operators saying, okay, I'll sell you, a logo on my shirt or some boards around the pitch, that's a big waste and a big actual asymmetry of the deal.
Indeed, Simon, there'll be a lot more to come on fan engagement and data in due course. But Rick, coming back to the subject of integrity in sports betting, the EFL has had a long-standing partnership with Sky Bet as principal sponsors. Talk us through the EFL's focus on safer gambling and how you hope to work with stakeholders to deliver that.
Well, there's more to be done, but clearly we are all rightly concerned about the harmful impact of betting. It's actually lower than many people think, and we have a new gambling bill coming someday in the UK. It's been on the stocks for a long time, and the voluntary decision by Premier League clubs to forego shirt sponsorship was a kind of precursor to prevent that being banned within the bill itself. But we've done a lot of research in terms of trying to see whether there's any correlation between sponsorship and gambling harm, and all of our research suggests that there isn't. But nevertheless, I think we all have a responsibility to make sure that gambling is as safe as possible. We want it to be broadly recreational. When it's recreational, that kind of minimizes the risk of fixing, but also helps to reduce the risk of harm to individuals. And as Simon said, that's all about skin in the game for people watching. There have been fascinating studies in the US from years ago when ostensibly betting was illegal, but nevertheless happened in large measure. And lo and behold, TV audiences are retained when bettors have skin in the game, and then when they don't, the audiences fall off. So, a big lesson there in terms of the convergence of betting and viewing, which goes above and beyond data in a sense, and that of course follows the explosion of in-play betting via the internet, which came about here from 2005 onwards. But as I said, I think sports and bookmakers have a responsibility to make sure that we all behave sensibly, that betting on sports is lucrative for sports, lucrative for bookmakers, fun for the participants, but we try wherever possible to remove the danger. And for example, making sure that we're not encouraging young people to bet, we're not encouraging children to bet, and that people are aware of the dangers of betting is, it's just one of those areas of responsibility where I think we can all do more, but we all have that shared responsibility to do whatever we can.
Indeed, Rick. Simon, just expanding upon what Rick just said, it was announced back in April that Premier League clubs, of course, had agreed to withdraw gambling sponsorship on the front of their shirts from the 2026-27 season, following what the Premier League described as an extensive consultation involving the DCMS and all 20 clubs. The caveat being sponsorship on sleeves, hoardings, and training tops would remain unaffected. When you see developments like that, Simon, how do you read the current state of play? And does it signal an evolving, almost changing relationship between rights holders and betting companies?
Yeah, I don't know too much about that actual initiative, but it sounds like it's something that is well thought through. I'm a little bit skeptical, I guess, in the respect that, and I'm not saying this with any inside information, but if I was the Premier League, I'd probably be trying to clear the decks so that I could do something on a central basis, maybe. But again, to echo my theme of the need to put in place integrity measures, that's probably the best way to do it, and that all clubs working individually probably not as effective in getting everyone to the table and working to put in place these measures as maybe the Premier League is essentially.
Indeed. Rick, just coming over to yourself, it's been noted that the SPFL in Scotland and the EFL here, of course, would not be following the Premier League and removing such sponsorship involving the betting companies. Now, this, of course, is underpinned by the fact that it's a very different ballgame financially that we're talking about. It's not a like-for-like comparison. Now, when you consider the Premier League to, say, the EFL, how critical is it to make that distinction, given you're talking fundamentally different economics?
I think there's a lot of politics involved rather than good sense and economics, because if the objective is to reduce gambling harm, then bluntly it doesn't make any sense at all to allow us to carry on with sponsorship and not the Premier League. So in that sense, it's all a bit odd. And as I said, we carried out very extensive research, which we published and we submitted to government to say that we have been unable to find any evidence at all that there's a correlation between sponsorship and gambling harm. It's not an integrity issue. It's very much more a gambling harm, problem gambling issue, but there is no correlation. And I think fundamentally, where we're coming from is saying that certainly in the UK, government decided in 2005 to liberalise the betting market. We have the most liberal betting market pretty much in the world in terms of bookmakers can offer bets on just about anything they like in real time. Now, from an integrity point of view, which we may come back to, that's a good thing, because actually what you want is pretty much everybody betting on the legal regulated markets. What you don't want to be doing is driving people into the the grey or the black markets where the bets are untraceable. So you want as many people as possible betting on the licensed markets. But clearly, what that has enabled is for the bookmakers to make vast amounts of money on the back of sport. Now, when government here in 1961 legalised sports betting for the first time, betting on horse racing, they introduced a levy, statutory levy, to protect the racecourses, who were broadly the only source of betting previously. So that was how sport benefited from betting. They didn't have a levy of any form in 2005, and highly unlikely that they would. But what they did basically say was that given that there's a huge market operating out there, a free market, then it's entirely legitimate for sport to negotiate whatever deals it can to take a share of the bookmakers' profits, which of course is an entirely legitimate aim. And that in a sense is why sponsorship has exploded. It's the market actually taking some of the profits from bookmaking and sports betting and bringing it back into sport. So in that sense, you know, we regard it as being entirely legitimate that we're able to continue to sell sponsorship on shirts. And as you mentioned earlier, that we have a very, very long-standing relationship and a very successful partnership for the league itself. And for our clubs, they would lose a lot of money if they lost the betting sponsorship. It would certainly be, I guess, more challenging for them than it might be up at Premier League level. But as I said, it's more about being able to get a fair share of the profits that people are making out of sport, basically.
No, indeed, Rick, and I think the reason why the blanket ban, of course, has been dismissed, there is potentially that financial element that perhaps doesn't get as many headlines. I've got a couple stats here that, full disclosure, I nicked from one of your podcast appearances. And I think here it was said that the bottom club in the Premier League makes £96 million in television revenue, whereas the top championship club makes around £8 million. It's also said that in 2018-19, Premier League clubs combined for a revenue of £5.1 billion, whereas championship clubs were around the £1 billion mark. Mm-hmm. So clearly a gap of 4 billion, nearly 5x in terms of revenue, combined revenues, of course. So is that the chasm or the gap, Rick, that you're trying to perhaps address through the redistribution going forward?
Yeah. So I mean that is basically what occupies most of my waking hours and quite a lot of the sleeping ones as well, which goes way beyond betting and sponsorship. You know, it's also interesting that when we formed the Premier League, which seems like quite a long time ago, but not that long ago in terms of the history of sport. But back in 92, 93, the turnover of the Premier League, the company, was about 45 million. Turnover of the EFL was 34. So there's a gap of 11 million. EFL turnover was 75% of the level of the Premier League level. Now the gap is 3 billion, and the EFL's turnover is 6% of the Premier League level, and yet we're trying to maintain a pyramid where clubs can rise and fall, and indeed they do. You know, 52 clubs have been members of the Premier League since its inception. Luton were the 52nd club to join, and 19 of the Championship clubs have Premier League experience. We do need that ability to move up and down, but what we do need is the ability to move up and down without facing financial catastrophe. So we've been pushing hard for redistribution, narrowing the gap, or the cliff edge as we call it, and trying to come up with something more equitable. And that, of course, is very much intertwined with all the debate about the football regulator, which is very much sort of front and center of football debates at the moment.
I think, Rick, it might be useful to just get a sense. Of course, things like parachute payments. We know what your stance is on that, and of course, it makes sense. But I think one thing that you stated on an appearance earlier was the fact that you don't really need a parachute to jump off a step. You need a parachute to jump off a cliff, and I think in some ways it's perhaps important to put that into context, especially with the white paper and hopefully the regulator going forward.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's all about narrowing the gap, and our ideas, which have been pretty well publicised, are that we need a greater share of revenue coming downwards, and we also need to look at the distribution mechanisms within the Premier League and within the Championship, so that what we would like to do is to halve that gap between top and bottom. First year parachute is about £44 million. As you've said, the gap between Premier League and Championship is about 90. Well, if you halve the gap, then you don't need a parachute of £45 million. And that's where we're trying to get to. Not sure we will, but hopefully we will make steps in that direction. But our concern is that we need variety, we need vibrancy within the Championship and within the Premier League. Championship is an unbelievably competitive league. It's very, very exciting. We get unexpected results every week. We get teams rising and falling. But the blunt reality is we've got 19 non-parachute clubs effectively playing for one promotion place, because in each of the last 6 years, 2 of the promoted teams have been parachute teams. We haven't had a year yet when all three teams have been parachute teams, but that will come. That's only a matter of time. We have no issue with relegated clubs getting money to make sure that they're not facing catastrophe when they come down. But it's gone too far. They're not parachute payments. They're trampoline payments. That effectively they're there to enable clubs to bounce straight back up. So we think there's an adjustment needed just to make the system fairer.
Thanks for that, Rick. And bringing the discussion back to sports betting, I'm going to pause and take a quick question from the audience. This question comes in from Peter, and Peter asks, how does the Premier League level of betting in terms of revenue and true impact compare to both the US and Asian markets? I.e., are there good and bad learnings from those markets at all? Of course, we'll get into the US market in just a moment, but Simon, do you want to potentially take that?
Yeah, sorry, I was looking at another question here. Is that from Peter?
It is indeed, yeah.
Okay, so can you repeat?
Yeah, of course.
What that was?
So how does the Premier League, in terms of level of betting, compare, when it comes to things like revenue and impact to the US and the Asian markets? Now, the US market, of course, is a lot more nascent as compared to the European market, with PASPA only being repealed 5 years ago. So what, in your experience, are the good and bad learnings, perhaps, what you've seen in the US market?
Well, good learnings is that I think the major US governing bodies seem to be very proactive in terms of engaging with the betting operators. So this kind of cooperation that we've been talking about is happening. One thing that I guess is a bit more difficult or challenging is that all these regulations are enabled on a statewide level. So I think there's 37 states have deregulated at the moment. Each of those have different rules, and that can cause some inconsistencies. And if you're going to, I guess, speak to the regulators and try and forge a common understanding, it's a bit difficult to go around every single state and do that. In terms of size, you said, yeah, look, as far as I know, that the Hong Kong Jockey Club is bigger than all the UK sports operators, betting operators put together. But officially they're 1% of the betting market, right? So if you look at Asia, China being an absolutely massive market, it's all unregulated, it's all measured. You actually don't know how much activity is. Now, that must surely point to a huge potential if things are done the right way.
Indeed. Thanks for that, Simon. And thank you for your question, Peter. Do keep your questions coming, of course, for both Rick and Simon, and we will keep enough time just before the end for those questions. Now, I think Peter touched upon something fairly interesting, Simon, Rick. Let's change tack and talk about sports betting across the pond. Now, for the benefit of the audience, the Professional and Amateur Sports Protection Act of 1992, or PASPA, effectively made sports wagering in the US illegal except for the states of Nevada, Oregon, Montana, and Delaware, effectively giving Vegas a monopoly over legal sports betting. There did, however, exist a large black market, as you've alluded to earlier, Rick. In 2018, PASPA was repealed when the NCAA lost a landmark case against the state of New Jersey. Since then, with the additions of North Carolina and Vermont, as you rightly said, Simon, 37 US states have legalized sports betting in one form or another, paving the way for a market largely dominated by FanDuel and DraftKings. Now, Rick, I'm aware you're a huge admirer of US sports. Despite the European market being a lot more mature in terms of sports betting, what are your reflections on the US sports betting market post-PASPA?
Well, I think the first thing to say is prohibition doesn't work. I was another interesting exercise I was involved in 2016 with a very, very good friend and colleague, Professor David Forrest from the University of Liverpool. We did a piece of research for the American Gaming Association as a precursor to the repeal of PASPA on legalizing and regulating sports betting and why that should be done. And, you know, first of all, it's interesting. I mean, very difficult by definition, very difficult to assess the size of an illegal market. But from a variety of studies, sources, different research projects, we were pretty comfortable that the size of the illegal market in the States was absolutely huge. A Gallup poll in 2016 said that around 10% of people in the US had bet on sport in the previous year. That's about the same size as the market in the UK, the legal market. 9 to 10% of people in the UK bet. And again, paradoxically, way back in 1951, when the UK first debated legalizing betting, again, 10% of the population was betting. So there is a tendency, a preponderance for people to bet. And if they want to bet, they will. Our recommendation was from an integrity point of view, from a gambling harm point of view, from a government taxes point of view, vastly better to recognize that there is a demand for betting, to license it, to regulate it, to bring it basically out of the shadows and have it controlled. It's you know, it's hard to think of an argument not to. Get all the moral arguments. I mean, I don't bet. I never have bet. Absolutely get that there are an awful lot of people who don't want to bet, and there are a lot of people who think that sport and betting should not mix. Get all of that, and I respect it. And I think I've changed my view over the decade, having been involved with the Sports Betting Integrity Panel. When I was at Liverpool, we were regularly turned down betting companies as shirt sponsors. We didn't think it actually met our club values. But as I said, the reality is around 10% of people do want to bet. So bring it out into the open, regularize it, and then alongside that, it's entirely legitimate for sport, given that that's what people are betting on, to be able to make sure that they are recompensed for providing the entertainment, providing the show that people want to bet on. As I said, some governments, of course, do have a levy. Some governments take a levy from bookmakers and give it to sport. Never going to happen in the UK, not going to happen in the US. So entirely legitimate for sport to find ways of interacting. And as Simon has rightly said, I think that, bearing in mind in the UK, people bet online, it's interactive. They want a piece of the action. They want to be able to use the red button. They want to be able to bet on the game that they're actually watching. Quite challenging when you've got 37 states with different regulations. Is that the most effective? Does that recognize what the market will actually want? I guess time will tell. But I see a convergence coming. At the moment, we kind of sell TV rights, and we sell data, and we sell betting sponsorships. And that is kind of an old-fashioned segmentation. And I think there is going to be a much greater convergence. And as Simon absolutely rightly touched on, sports are a little bit behind in terms of the importance of data and interaction with who at the end of the day are our consumers. And that's where I think people see the potential for, I guess, a paradigm shift in the way that sport interacts with its consumers over the next decade or so. Don't ask me what the outcome is going to be. Nobody knows that, but I definitely think there are going to be big changes ahead.
Rick, you're spot on. I mean, there, of course, was a massive underbelly. People would joke about the fact that they'd go to their local Walmart and place a bet with their bookie, and this ended up being a sizable market, as you alluded to, roughly 10%. Now, the fact that DraftKings and FanDuel, of course, had the growth that they had was, it's been put down to the fact that they were fantasy providers with a huge database, of course, and a lot of data, which, of course, we will get to in just a moment. But given that since then you've had, PointsBet and you've had MGM and Caesars opening sportsbooks, Fanatics now opening a sportsbook, are you somewhat surprised at the growth in the US market over the last 5 years, given how nascent it's been?
Not at all. I think, on the one hand, the demand has clearly been there. There's no question that the latent demand is enormous. But on the other hand, I think one of the barriers to immediate growth has been the fact that it's regulated state by state. That's taken time. There are differences. So, quite difficult for European bookmakers who've got vast experience, and certainly vast experience of, as Simon touched on earlier, online betting, and they're very, very smart at interacting with consumers in real time, but actually quite difficult to build a business if you're having to do that state by state. And one of our recommendations when we were in the States and working with the American Gaming Association was there needed to be a federal authority. This really shouldn't be something that was dealt with state by state. But listen, politics are politics, and given that states make taxes, difficult, I guess, for them to give that up. So, we are where we are. But yeah, I think demand is enormous. It will be satisfied eventually. But as I said, I think the relatively slow growth in the in catching up with Europe is partly that structural issue with having to go state by state, and the sports being, I guess, inevitably cautious, learning, very new for them to go from illegality to sort of open market overnight. It's they've been rightly concerned about their own reputations, their fan bases, and nothing wrong with being cautious and making sure that they get it right. But potential clearly absolutely vast in the US.
It truly is. It's huge. It'll be interesting to see how the market develops after what's been a bit of a gold rush, of course, in the last 5 years. Simon, let's change tack and talk about data partners. It's an area you know fairly well. InCrowd, of course, a digital data agency, among other services offered, of course. Could you perhaps give us an insight into how critical these data partnerships are when it comes to converting fan engagement to fan monetization in the context of sports betting?
Yeah, no, absolutely. You've got to basically know who your fan is and what their behaviour is, right? when I got to FIFA, we looked at the 2018 World Cup, which, as you can imagine, is a pretty big event online. There were something like 275 million unique visitors to FIFA.com. Didn't know who any of them were. So I'd say the number one rule is to at least get some kind of CRM in place, if possible, a fan data platform to get that data and then convert that into any number of initiatives. And as I said before, I think the betting companies are really good at this because they've been doing it for a long time, and that's how they've been primarily making a lot of money. Where we can learn from that, greater personalization of experiences. Who are they? Who are these fans? Targeted advertising, enhanced fan engagement. The betting obviously offers that, and then bringing in other revenue streams, licensing, ticket sales, and so forth. So yeah, absolutely. It's all about connecting in this world.
It certainly ties into the sportification of sports, doesn't it? The highly curated experience with so many rights holders now going D2C and direct to their consumers. And Rick, it was back in June that Genius Sports extended its official data tracking and analytics partnership with the EFL through to the 2024-25 season, with AI-powered tracking systems being installed across all remaining championship grounds. Are you excited by the potential of AI in the supply of low-latency live data?
Well, AI is coming, and it's with us in a whole variety of different ways, and its impact on sport is going to be incredibly exciting, whether it be on the pitch and improving talent ID, whether it be in helping with identification of our customer base. I should say that the partnership extends, of course, to the Premier League. It's through Dataco. It's not just the EFL who are partnering with Genius. But again, the trick that sport is missing at the moment is we're supplying data, which is vital from bookmakers' point of view in terms of the integrity of the bets and their ability to transact with their consumers. But they're not our consumers. And this is, I think, the paradigm shift that needs to come from a sports point of view. We sell our broadcasting rights to broadcasters and we have no idea who's watching. They're not our customers. We sell sponsorships. We don't know who the consumers are. We sell data. We don't know who the consumers are. What sport needs to do is to find a way of one-to-one relationships with our consumers. We'll be seeing different technology, obviously, in terms of broadcasting. EFL, we've been successfully streaming games, allowing clubs to stream games, and in that way they do know who the subscribers and who their consumers are. But that is the biggest possible shift that I see over the next decade. But the trick is how to do that whilst not losing money in the meantime, because clearly that's why broadcasters and sponsors pay premium prices. It's to not only to get access to exposure, but it is to get access to consumers. And I think that debate as to, and I'd be very interested in Simon's view of this, whose consumers are they at the end of the day? Are they sports? Are they broadcasters' consumers? Are they sponsors' consumers? They're everybody's consumers, but from a sports point of view, we need to know, and we need to work harder at identifying who our customer base really is.
And just on that point, Simon, to identify your customer base and looking at technologies that can perhaps lead to higher personalization, more data collection, data points on different consumers, are there any particular use cases, AI or otherwise, in terms of technology and innovation that excite you going forward?
I don't know. As I say, I personally, I'm trying to grapple with AI myself, so I certainly wouldn't say I know exactly where that's going, other than it's going to have a huge impact on the way we do our work. No, look, the ability to identify and target the fan and connect those fans together with the rights owners and the brands that want to support, and in terms of what we're talking about at the moment, the betting operators and the sports books, that's crucial, and that requires, in many cases, bespoke software and so forth. So that is something that's very important, but in the context of, as I said before, maybe a shift in mindset from the rights owners themselves to a more of a shared and cooperative model with those betting operators. That the traditional sponsorship is a very kind of one-sided thing. I'll take your money, you get some exposure or whatever. But if you can work together, and maybe the area I'd target is shared transaction data, then it's probably something that both sides benefit. I mean, it's interesting to look at the betting operators, as I understand it. They're not against this kind of thing. It's in everyone's interests to share data. You get more information on the fans, and ultimately you will know more about the activity that's going on. So to bring it back to integrity, you can basically fight the illegitimate activity or any fraudulent transactions a lot better if everyone's aware of that. And in some markets, that has been happening more than others. Australia is an interesting example because they're the highest betting per capita in the world. So they love a punt. They're also a very commercialized sporting environment. So what they have been doing, they've got the levies that Rick mentioned, and there's a very, very good system of sharing of data between the sports books and the governing bodies, and actual obligations to notify each other for any suspicious activity, and as a result, a large degree of control that I think they've been quite successful in implementing.
Thanks for that, Simon. And just before we do a bit of future gazing, I'll take one more question from the audience before we proceed. This one comes in from Manuel. It's a big picture question. He says, there's no doubt sports betting has contributed to the growth of sports sponsorship deals. However, do you believe it's time for sports books to shift their focus towards promoting responsible gambling rather than portraying it as a positive effect? And how can they achieve it? Now, I know we've touched upon this to a certain extent during the course of the discussion, but Rick, any general thoughts on how perhaps a change of messaging could be par for the course for betting operators?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's something that we all have to take responsibility for, sports and betting operators alike. It's quite interesting that, and listen, nothing I'm going to say is going to try and sound like an excuse for doing nothing, but it's useful to just keep a bit of perspective that there are probably more problem gamblers associated with the national lottery in this country than there are with sports betting, and yet it's sport that tends to get the and football in particular that tends to get the criticism. I think the good news is that the incidence of problem gambling associated with sport is actually reducing year on year. It's down from around 7.5% to around 3%. Now that's still too high. We don't want any problem gambling, but I think there's a lot that sport and the bookmakers can do, and that's definitely going to be a feature of the new Gambling Act when it is finally published in this country. There will be there would definitely be greater obligations on bookmakers. We've seen enormous problems with betting machines in bookmakers' shops, for example. Sports betting is not free from criticism. There's definitely a lot more that can be done, and given the size of the profits, given the size of the taxes that government is taking from sports betting, it's not as if there isn't ample money around to try to solve the problem. And clearly there is an awful lot of betting advertising around sporting events. Don't have a problem at all with that being curtailed, because I think it's probably got to the stage where the pendulum has maybe just swung a bit too far, and we just have to rein things in. But as I said, if we all work collectively, and certainly we've really enjoyed working with Sky Bet, who's been a terrific partner, to try to think of ways in which we can get the message across, because at the end of the day, association with sport is a very positive force. If we just change the messaging from promoting the bookmakers to promoting safe betting, then I think that can help enormously. And as I said, we've been working hard at it at the EFL for quite a long time. Sky Bet are very willing partners. There's definitely more that can be done, and I'm sure that, as I said, when we finally see the Betting Act here, a lot more will be done.
Many thanks for that, Rick, and thank you for your question, Manuel. Simon, just a quick one as a follow-up to what Rick just spoke about. Do you think there is an onus to change messaging and a bigger sense of responsibility, perhaps, that should be put in place really going forward?
Yeah, I agree with that. But as Rick said, I think it's going in the right direction anyway, and that maybe the politicians need to look at where there are bigger problems. Like anyone who's just walked into a casino and seen the poker machines and so forth, you will see many people who really shouldn't be there spending their hard-earned savings, and on the other hand, sports betting sometimes can get a bad rap, but you've got to remember that a lot of those people who are betting are respectable individuals. They are engaging in a very legitimate activity, and they don't need to be told what to do and what not to. So yes, messaging. It's got to be strong and forceful and suit the politicians, because obviously there's a political aspect to this. But I think the gambling industry as a whole has many issues to address, which is sport might get an unfair focus.
No, absolutely, Simon. I think, Rick, you were quite vocal about that. And what we'll do is, before we sort of wrap up today's discussion, I'll take one more question from the audience. This one comes in from Peter Lundstrom. And Rick, I'll fire this your way. It's a specific question on the distinction between amateur and professional sports betting. So Peter asks, why are there so many legitimate betting companies offering betting on matches with purely amateur players and officials? Alluding to the fact that it makes it harder to monitor such betting. Are there any general thoughts in terms of that distinction between professional and amateur sports betting, in your opinion, Rick?
I think it's a really good question. If you see large volumes of betting on amateur sport, then you probably are going to be a little concerned, because at the end of the day, why do people bet rather than play roulette? It's because they think it's much more an element of skill rather than pure chance. They think they can outwit the bookmakers. They think they've got better knowledge. Well, added to which, of course, there's a vast amount now of recreational betting, which is relatively small betting, which is, as I said, it's skin in the game. You're watching the game. How do you participate? I think I'll have a bet on the score after 80 minutes, or I'll have a fiver on this, that, or the other. if you're betting on amateur sport, what's that about? Do you know how are you going to know the outcome of that? And again, in terms of an integrity point of view, Premier League is not terribly at risk. No room for complacency, but it's not terribly at risk. One of the reasons for that is there's a vast amount at stake for Premier League players who get involved in, to get involved in a fix. Why would they risk career and reputation? And pragmatically, the amount of money they're earning at the moment means that the amount of money that you would have to pay them is absolutely vast. If you want to fix a game, fix an amateur game, fix a semi-professional game, because the amount you'd have to pay in order to do it is so much less. So large bets on insignificant events definitely, and this was an issue that definitely cropped up, for example, in tennis, and fixing a sport, whether individuals involved, is arguably easier than fixing a team sport. But if you see large volumes of betting on a satellite event rather than a main event, then that's the sort of betting pattern you're going to be looking at quite carefully. And again, in terms of bookmakers behaving responsibly, why would they be offering significant bets on amateur sport that frankly they know very little about? Because one thing is for sure with bookmakers, they don't actually like losing money. And they make money because they know more than the punters do, or they think that they do. So yeah, large volumes of betting on amateur sport are definitely a red flag and a danger sign from an integrity point of view.
Thanks for that, Rick, and thanks for your question, Peter. Just as we wrap up, Simon, any reflections on amateur sports betting, and do you echo what Rick's essentially said there?
Yeah, I do. I understand that tennis, as Rick mentioned, has an outsized proportion of alerts that come up for suspicious betting, particularly at the lower levels. So if you look at amateur sport, or let's say the huge volume of matches that don't have much riding on it from a sporting point of view, that's a high risk situation. And so yeah, there needs to be greater focus in that area. I totally agree with that.
Thanks for that, Simon. And just finally, Rick, we can't let you go without asking you one final question. Now, last season saw record-breaking attendance figures with 22 million fans attending EFL matches in what you described as a special season. So now with that we're 1 month into the new season, what would you like to see more of by the end of the season?
More of the same, I think. We had a record first day, which given last season was quite some achievement. So attendances again are up. We want to see competition right across every one of our divisions. We will, frankly. That's the nature of the EFL. So for us, everything's looking good. Let's just hope we don't have any more pandemics or things hitting us out of left field. And obviously, again, from our point of view, the most topical issue on the horizon is our negotiation with the Premier League to get a little bit more money flowing down, and the progress towards a football regulator, which should be with us anytime soon. So it's a very big year ahead for everybody in football.
Long may that success continue. Well, thanks ever so much, Rick. In the interest of time, we will have to leave it there. Thank you all for being such an engaged audience and keeping your questions coming. My thanks to Rick Parry, chairman of the EFL, and of course Simon Thomas, partner at Colgan Bauer and chairman at InCrowd. Keep across the UEFA AAA on LinkedIn and Twitter for more on our upcoming events. But that's all from me. Until next time, thank you and goodbye.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.